A number of years ago, we started looking at the way different salespeople sold. As many of you know, there's been many systems out there, techniques, methodologies. What we found is still too many people go out there and do too much talking too soon. So we decided to come up with a sales methodology that was focused very much around consultative selling. It's been trademarked and we now call it QUIS selling, the consultative sales methodology. So in this series, we're going to go through all 13 stages of QUIS selling. But for this initial part, I'd like to just share with you really what Q, U, I, and S stand for, so that you can get the bigger picture. Q, naturally, as you would expect, stands for question. What's interesting for all of us in sales is our job is to ask the right questions so that they talk. It's as simple as that. When we start a meeting, after we've had our small talk, it's about sitting down with the prospect and just asking the right questions so that they talk. Now, why do we want them to talk? Again, initially, it doesn't have to be about any specific issue or specific problem, but it's very much just getting them feeling comfortable and talking a bit about their situation. So once we've done the questioning, obviously, we're looking for understanding to take place. So the U, as you would expect, stands for understand. Keeping it simple, there are 3 stages within the understanding. And the very first understanding is that we understand their situation. Now, their situation is everything from their needs, their wants, their issues, their personal situation, whatever is relevant in that particular sales scenario. Now, most salespeople believe that's the reason we ask questions. What's fascinating for us, though, is that's not the real reason. Because truthfully, if you've been in sales for a long time, you probably already kind of understand their situation. The real reason we ask questions is for the second understanding. And that is so that they understand their situation. I wish I could say we invented that, and I wish I could say others have invented it recently. But really, if you go back 400 BC, it was Socrates that was the first individual that talked about the importance of people understanding it within themselves. So the most important part of understanding is that they understand their situation. Because once they understand their situation, then they're open for maybe some new ideas. The third part of our understanding is that they understand that we understand their situation. That may sound a little bit like a tongue twister, but very simply, because we've asked the right questions, it's obvious that we understand what we're talking about. You see, most salespeople think to prove they're an expert is to tell. But actually, through research, what they're finding is that by asking the right questions, it proves you understand what you're talking about. Otherwise, you couldn't ask the right questions. So that's the first 2 parts, the question and understand. The I then stands for influence, and it's very important. You earn the right to influence. See, most salespeople, they talk about themselves too soon. What we recommend is that once you've done the Q and the U, you've earned the right to influence. Now, you influence in 2 ways. The first way you influence is by engineering the vision as to why they should use you. The reason we've chosen engineer the vision is because your job is to engineer, i.e. build, construct, design their vision as to why using you. Now, you build it based on what they've talked about earlier in the meeting. Many salespeople, when it's their turn to talk, they talk about the 5, 6, 7 reasons why everyone should use them. And in research, what we've discovered is that if there are 6 reasons why companies like you, and 3 of them aren't relevant to the prospect you're talking to, and 3 of them are, those 3 that aren't relevant actually negate the 3 that are. So what's important is just share the 2 or 3 reasons why they should use you based on what they've talked about earlier. The second part about influence is very much about providing the recommendation or solution. Now, if it's a first meeting, that may just be a very small just introduction as to how you could work, because obviously there may be another meeting or 2 after that. If it's a second or a third meeting, then it may be a much bigger part of the recommendation. But it's very much where you're sitting down there and showing them visually and some ideas about how you can provide some solutions. The final part of QUIS is the S, which is the solidify. Now, the reason we've chosen the word solidify is if you think about the typical, think about a volcano, you think about when all the lava comes down, eventually it solidifies and it becomes as hard as rock. And that's the point about the S. Our job in sales is to develop a conceptual relationship with the client, a long-term relationship. And so we're solidifying the relationship, the sale, the next steps. And there are 4 parts to solidifying. The first is very much where you confirm that you're both on the same page. It is important before you go into the closing stages that both sides feel comfortable with each other. So it's very much about confirming that you're on the same page, just in case there's any misunderstandings. The second part is very much around next steps. Now, some little top tips around there are the fact that many people when they leave a sales meeting, the salesperson has all the work to do. In reality, both sides should have something, because then you're working together. So around next steps, both sides should discuss what they're going to be doing next. The third part is when we close, and again, close is something many people feel uncomfortable with, but as long as it's facilitative and not confrontational, it's something both sides need to do to work out, are we on the same page, or are there some other things we need to look at? And then the final part is very much where we talk about follow-up. The meeting finishes, and then what happens beyond the meeting is extremely important. And it's amazing how many people say they had a wonderful meeting with a salesperson, but then nothing happened afterwards. So we discuss the importance of the follow-up. So I hope that gives you a good understanding about QUIS. There are 13 stages that fit underneath that, and we're going to be going through each of those one by one.